The most dangerous computer virus may not be the one that crashes your system. It may be the one that leaves everything running and changes a single number. In April 2026, security researchers revealed the purpose of a piece of malware that had been hiding in plain sight for years. Its name was Fast16. It appears to predate Stuxnet by roughly half a decade. It did not need to make centrifuges scream, shut down a power grid, or fill a control room with alarms. Its method was quieter. It could enter scientific software, interfere with calculations, and return an answer that looked legitimate, not random, not obviously corrupted. Repeatable. That last detail changes everything. Because when a result repeats, scientists begin to trust it. Engineers build around it. Governments make decisions from it. And if the same invisible hand has been changing those answers for 20 years, we may never know which machines, buildings, weapons, or models were born from a lie. This is not a story about a machine becoming possessed. It is the documented discovery of a sabotage framework whose full targets, operators, and consequences remain unknown. But by the time the code was finally understood, it had already raised a question darker than any ghost story. What happens when proof itself can be compromised? The first clue did not arrive in 2026. It appeared years earlier, inside one of the most infamous intelligence leaks of the digital age. In 2017, a mysterious group calling itself the Shadow Brokers released files associated with the Equation Group, a name security researchers use for an exceptionally sophisticated espionage operation widely linked to the United States. The leak exposed tools, exploits, and fragments of a hidden cyber arsenal. Analysts around the world rushed to examine them. Some discoveries triggered immediate alarms. Others seemed almost meaningless. Among the material was an unusual reference to Fast16. Near it was a message attributed to an NSA antivirus signature list. Nothing to see here, carry on. At the time, that could be read as dismissal, harmless code, a false positive, something an analyst had already inspected and cleared. Years later, it began to look more like a warning label written in reverse. The files connected to Fast16 were old. One sample dated back to approximately 2005, an era of Windows 2000 and Windows XP, weak network credentials, removable media, and industrial systems never designed to survive modern cyber warfare. The malware used Lua, a lightweight scripting language often embedded inside other applications. That choice made it flexible. Its components could be adapted without rebuilding the entire framework. But flexibility was not the most disturbing feature. Fast16 appeared to search for specialized engineering applications. Researchers identified references associated with LS-DYNA, software used for complex physical simulations, PKPM, used in structural and construction engineering, and MOHID, a modeling system used for water and environmental processes. These are not programs most people keep on a home computer. They belong in laboratories, engineering firms, research institutions, and government projects, places where simulated results may determine whether an object bends, fractures, floods, survives, or fails. Imagine an engineer named Daniel sitting alone in a secure laboratory in 2006. Daniel is fictional, but the kind of calculation in front of him is real. He is modeling what happens to a structure under extreme pressure. The software divides a fraction of a second into thousands of mathematical steps. Stress moves through metal. Heat expands a surface. A shockwave strikes, reflects, and changes direction. No human being can calculate the complete interaction by hand, so Daniel trusts the simulation. The first run shows a weakness. He checks the input file. He examines the mesh. He verifies the material properties. Then he runs the model again. The same weakness appears in the same place. That is reassuring. Random corruption rarely repeats with such precision. Daniel changes the design. runs the test a third time, and watches the predicted failure disappear. The new model appears safe. He signs the report. But suppose the weakness was never there. Suppose a hidden program had intercepted part of the calculation and altered the answer by a small, deliberate amount. It did not crash the simulation. It did not fill the output with impossible values. It produced a plausible error, then reproduced that error every time Daniel checked his work. By correcting the fictional defect, Daniel may have introduced a real one. He would never see the malware. He would see evidence. That is the psychological precision of Fast16. Most cyber attacks announce themselves through absence, missing files, dead machines, stolen credentials. This framework attacked confidence. It targeted the point where digital output becomes human belief. The public learned to fear industrial malware through Stuxnet. Discovered in 2010, Stuxnet targeted Siemens control systems associated with Iran's Natanz uranium enrichment facility. It manipulated the operation of centrifuges while concealing aspects of that manipulation from operators. It was not loud or clumsy. It was one of the most sophisticated cyber weapons ever publicly analyzed, built to cause physical effects while delaying discovery. Fast16 appears to represent an earlier and different philosophy. Instead of commanding a specific machine to change speed, it could compromise the mathematical world used to design or evaluate machines. It did not necessarily need access to the final hardware. If it could influence a simulation upstream, human beings might carry the sabotage forward themselves through revised blueprints, abandoned designs, failed experiments, and incorrect conclusions. The malware would not have to remain present when the damage occurred. Its lie could survive as a PDF report, a design standard, an archived test result, or a decision made in a room full of experts. In 2026, researchers Vitaly Kamluk and Juan Andres Guerrero Saad described their work decoding the framework. What they found suggested patient, targeted sabotage. Fast16 could move across older Windows networks, examine its environment, avoid certain security products, and look for applications of interest. Its manipulation of floating point calculations, the numerical approximations computers use for complex real-world values, could introduce subtle and controlled deviations. Floating point arithmetic already contains tiny limitations. A computer cannot represent every possible decimal value with perfect accuracy. Engineers know this and design software to manage it. That makes the boundary between natural rounding and hostile manipulation an ideal hiding place. Change too much and the result becomes suspicious. Change almost nothing and the attack achieves nothing. The weapon must know exactly how far it can move a number before doubt becomes alarm. Fast16 lived in that narrow space, not between correct and obviously false, but between correct and believable. Now return to Daniel's laboratory. His supervisor does not accept the revised design immediately. She orders an independent run on another workstation. The result matches. A second engineer repeats the test. It matches again. The team reviews the equations and finds no obvious error. Each successful verification strengthens the wrong conclusion. This is where ordinary scientific caution can become part of the attack. Reproducibility is one of the foundations of science. A result that cannot be repeated may be noise, contamination, or human error. A result that survives repeated testing earns confidence. But if the same compromised software, library, or network payload shapes every test, repetition does not expose the lie, it certifies it. The scientists are not foolish. Their method is being used against them. Researchers have not publicly proven that Daniel's fictional structure, or any specific building, dam, reactor, or weapon, failed because of Fast16. That distinction matters. The identified software targets establish capability and intent more clearly than they establish consequences. Even the theory that Iran's nuclear program was a central target remains an assessment based on technical and historical clues, not a final public verdict. Yet those clues are difficult to ignore. LS-DYNA can model extreme physical events, including high-energy impacts and material behavior under enormous stress. Reporting on the discovery has connected the malware to simulations potentially relevant to nuclear research and weapons design. Fast16's apparent age places it before the best-known wave of sabotage against Iran's nuclear infrastructure. And the cryptic treatment of the framework inside intelligence-related material suggests that at least one powerful organization may have recognized it. But recognition is not attribution. No government has publicly claimed the operation. The researchers did not produce a signed confession from Washington, Tel Aviv, Moscow, Beijing, or any other capital. Code can contain clues, but sophisticated operators can plant clues. Infrastructure can be borrowed. Languages can be imitated. Timestamps can be altered. In cyber warfare, the cleanest fingerprint may be the one an attacker wants investigators to find. So the central mystery remains open. Who built Fast16, and where was it used? There is another possibility buried inside that question. A framework capable of targeting several unrelated engineering programs may not have been created for a single mission. It may have been a platform, a reusable method for corrupting technical truth wherever its operators required. One target might model a component under pressure. Another might calculate the strength of a building. Another might simulate water moving through a coastal region. Each field speaks a different scientific language, but all of them eventually reduce physical reality to numbers inside a computer. Fast16 did not need to understand the entire world. It only needed to alter the translation. Consider the chain of consequences from one changed output. A researcher sees an anomaly and delays a project. A director demands an investigation. A contractor replaces equipment that was never defective. A government suspects sabotage inside its own team. Careers end. Budgets move. Rival departments accuse one another. Years later, nobody remembers the original simulation. They remember only that one design failed and another was approved. The malware disappears, but the institution preserves its decision. This is the point where Fast16 becomes more unsettling than a conventional destructive worm. Physical wreckage invites forensic investigation. A burned controller can be examined. A failed rotor can be measured. Logs can reveal commands. But how do investigators prove that a calculation from 2007 was changed by malware when the workstation has been scrapped, the operating system erased, and the engineers have retired? They may recover the report and rerun the model using modern software. If the result differs, they still face a maze of innocent explanations. Updated material data, a new solver, different hardware, corrected bugs, changed assumptions. 20 years of technical progress can conceal 20 years of sabotage. The perfect cyberweapon may not erase its tracks. It may wait until normal history makes those tracks impossible to distinguish. That creates a second danger in the present. Once the existence of Fast16 becomes public, every unexplained failure can be blamed on it. A flawed design becomes foreign sabotage. A researcher's mistake becomes an intelligence operation. A government can invoke invisible malware without producing evidence. The discovery attacks trust in two directions. First, by proving calculations can be manipulated, then by making manipulation an excuse for anything. This is why the facts must remain separate from the nightmare. The facts are already severe. A sophisticated malware framework existed before Stuxnet. It was designed to interfere with specialized engineering and scientific software. It could make controlled alterations while attempting to avoid detection. Its full operational history has not been publicly reconstructed. Its author remains unconfirmed. The nightmare begins where the evidence ends. How many models did it touch? Were manipulated results ever incorporated into a physical system? Did investigators find it because the campaign failed, or because its mission had already ended? Was Fast16 retired after 2005, or were newer versions built? Versions designed for modern operating systems, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence. No public answer closes those questions, and today, the attack surface is larger than it was in 2005. Scientists rent computing power from remote data centers. Engineers share libraries across global supply chains. Automated systems generate code, optimize structures, and summarize test results. A compromised calculation may pass through dozens of machines before a human being sees the final chart. The more complex the pipeline becomes, the harder it is to identify the exact moment truth changed. Artificial intelligence adds another layer. An engineer can ask a model to interpret anomalous results, propose corrections, and generate a revised design. If the underlying data has been poisoned, the AI does not need to be malicious. It can become an efficient accomplice, confidently explaining a defect that does not exist and recommending a solution to the wrong problem. The human still signs the report. The machine still provides the evidence. And somewhere between them, accountability dissolves. Fast16 does not prove that an intelligence is hiding inside our computers. It does not contain a secret unified theory of physics. It has not spoken to analysts through a dark screen. Those ideas belong to fiction. The reality is colder. Human beings built a system capable of manufacturing false certainty. Other human beings may have trusted that certainty precisely because they followed the correct procedures. No supernatural entity was required. No conscious machine needed to wake up. The weapon worked by understanding something painfully ordinary about us. We trust an answer more when we can reproduce it. For centuries, science has advanced by measuring reality, checking results, and allowing evidence to defeat assumption. Fast16 did not attack that process from outside. It entered through the instruments and dressed the assumption as evidence. The malware's name now sits in public reporting, but its history is still filled with blank pages. Somewhere, perhaps in an obsolete archive or on a forgotten workstation, there may be another sample. It may contain a target list, a development date, or a fragment that points toward its author. Or there may be nothing left except simulations whose answers were accepted long ago. That is the final terror of Fast16. We know the code existed. We know the kind of software it searched for. We know what it was capable of changing. What we do not know is whether we are looking at a weapon that was caught before it succeeded, or the remains of an operation whose successes are still recorded as human error. So where would you draw the line? Would you reopen decades of engineering data, knowing that every discrepancy could create panic? Or would you leave the old results untouched and accept that some of them may have been written by an invisible adversary? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe to the Shadow Ledger and continue to the next case, because the most dangerous secrets are not always buried in classified files. Sometimes, they are preserved inside results everyone has already agreed are true. The file is public now. The ledger is still open.